The world changed overnight. News of the battle at Young Ho's farm spread across every media network on Earth. Governments that had been secretly excavating their own ships could no longer hide their discoveries. Within 48 hours, the existence of the ancient Starship network was public knowledge. Young Ho stood in the ship's command center, watching news reports from around the globe. In Tokyo, crowds gathered around the medical vessel that had emerged from beneath the city center. In London, the energy ship was providing clean power to half the metropolitan area. But in Moscow, emergency crews were still dealing with radiation leaks from the weapons platform that the Russian team had mishandled. Humanity is learning about its own history for the first time in 8 centuries, Jinsu said. His transformation was now complete. He moved and spoke with the perfect coordination of someone connected to a vast collective consciousness. But Young Ho could still see his son's personality within the alien patterns of light that danced behind his eyes. Nari had made a breakthrough that changed everything. Working with data from all the activated ships worldwide, she had discovered how to modify the Unity protocol to preserve individual human consciousness while still allowing access to the alien technology. The original process was designed during a desperate war, she explained to the International Council that had formed to coordinate humanity's response. The ancient humans who created it prioritized effectiveness over safety. But we can do better. Her modified protocol allowed humans to connect with the ship networks temporarily, gaining access to advanced capabilities without permanently altering their consciousness. It was more limited than full Unity integration, but it preserved what made humans uniquely human. Young Ho had volunteered to be the first test subject. The experience was overwhelming but manageable. For several hours, he could access the collective knowledge of humanity's stellar empire, see through sensors placed throughout the solar system, and communicate instantly with other connected humans around the world. But when the connection ended, he was still himself. It's like borrowing a superhuman brain for a while, he told Jiwoo afterward. You can think faster, see more clearly, and understand things that would normally take years to learn. But you don't lose who you are. The global network of ships was revealing the true scope of what humanity had once achieved. The vessel in Sydney contained archives of art, music, and literature from hundreds of human worlds. The ship beneath Cairo held agricultural techniques that could feed billions without damaging the environment. And the platform hidden under the ice in Antarctica contained manufacturing technology that could build anything imaginable, from basic raw materials. But the most important discovery came from the ship, Network's collective memory. Earth's ancient guardians had been busy during the 8 centuries since the last war. They had built a vast defensive network throughout the solar system, hidden bases on asteroids and moons, and early warning systems that could detect approaching fleets from dozens of light years away. The Dominion is coming, Jinsu announced during a global conference call with leaders from every nation. Our sensors detect their advanced scouts entering the outer solar system. The main fleet will arrive in 18 months. The alien force was massive, larger than the one that had attacked Earth centuries before. But this time humanity was not caught unprepared. The ship network provided blueprints for advanced weapons, shields, and spacecraft that could match anything the Dominion possessed. Countries that had been enemies for generations found themselves working together with an urgency born of survival. The Chinese shared their breakthrough in weapon systems. The Americans provided manufacturing capabilities. The Europeans contributed their advances in energy technology. Even the Russians, despite their earlier mistakes, offered their experience with the alien technology's more dangerous aspects. Young Ho's farm became the center of coordination for the global defense effort. His barn, once home to simple farming equipment, now housed communication arrays that connected to every ship network on Earth. The tunnel that led to the Agukka had been expanded into a complex that could house hundreds of researchers and military personnel. But the most remarkable change was in the people who worked with the ship networks. Using Nari's modified Unity protocol, humans from every country and culture learned to work together with an efficiency that had never been seen before. Language barriers disappeared when minds could share thoughts directly. Cultural differences became sources of strength rather than division. We're becoming something new, Jiwoo observed as she watched international teams working in perfect harmony around the clock. Not like the ancient Unity collective that sacrificed individuality for power, but something that enhances what makes us human. The preparation was intense. Hidden factories on the moon began producing spacecraft designed with 8 centuries of accumulated knowledge. Weapon platforms throughout the solar system came online for the first time since the last war. And humans who had never imagined traveling beyond Earth found themselves training to pilot starships among the asteroids. Young Ho often stood in his fields, looking up at stars that no longer seemed distant and cold. The night sky was now filled with activity invisible to normal human senses. Ships moved between Earth and Mars. Construction crews worked on massive orbital platforms, and somewhere beyond Pluto, ancient sensors watched for the approaching enemy. "Are you afraid?" Nari asked him one evening as they watched the sunset from the farmhouse porch. "Every day," Young Ho admitted, "but not the same kind of fear I had when this all started. Then I was afraid of losing my quiet life, my son, everything I thought I knew about the world. Now I'm afraid of failing to protect the new world we're building." The Dominion fleet arrived exactly when Jinsu and the ship networks predicted. They came expecting to find a primitive Earth defended by whatever ancient weapons the human guardians might have maintained. Instead, they found a unified humanity that had reclaimed its stellar heritage while evolving beyond what their ancestors thought possible. The battle was fought not just in space around Earth, but throughout the solar system. Human ships that looked like works of art moved with impossible grace between alien vessels built for pure destruction. Weapons that bent space and time clashed with shields that could deflect entire stars. And at the center of it all, humans connected through modified unity. Protocol coordinated their defense with the precision of a single mind while maintaining the creativity and adaptability that made them uniquely human. Young Ho found himself aboard the Agakka as it rose from beneath his farm for the first time in 8 centuries. He stood beside Jinsu in the command center, watching through the ship's sensors as Earth's fleet engaged the Dominion forces near Jupiter. "The aliens made the same mistake they made 800 years ago," Jinsu said, his voice carrying the certainty of collective knowledge. "They assumed that advancing technology required sacrificing what makes a species unique. But humanity found a different path. The Dominion fleet was impressive, larger and more powerful than anything the ancient humans had faced. But they fought with the rigid coordination of a hive mind, unable to adapt when their enemy did something unexpected. Humanity's forces moved with controlled chaos, each ship and weapon platform operating independently while sharing information and objectives through the Unity network. The turning point came when the Dominion commander attempted to negotiate. The alien voice transmitted across all communication channels spoke in perfect English. "Humans of Earth, you have proven more resilient than we calculated. We offer you terms of surrender that will preserve your species and your world." Young Ho looked at his son, seeing both the alien light of collective consciousness and the familiar warmth of the boy who had grown up on this farm. "What do we tell them?" Jinsu smiled, and for a moment he looked completely human again. "We tell them the same thing our ancestors told them 8 centuries ago. We tell them no." The Dominion fleet retreated after losing more than half their ships to human forces that should not have existed. As they fled toward the outer planets, long-range sensors detected their communications with the rest of their empire. The message was clear. Earth was not the primitive world they had expected to conquer. Humanity had become something new, something that could not be defeated or controlled. In the months that followed, as Earth settled into its new role as a spacefaring civilization, Young Ho often walked through his fields and thought about the incredible journey that had started with a damaged barn floor. His farm was still there, still growing crops, still connected to the land his family had worked for generations. But now it was also the birthplace of humanity's return to the stars. The tunnel beneath the barn led not just to an ancient ship, but to a future that combined the best of what humans had been with the best of what they could become. The barn still stood above it all, a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries lie hidden beneath the most ordinary places, waiting for someone brave enough to look beneath the surface and wise enough to choose the right path forward. Jinsu had been connected to the ship's systems for 3 days, and the changes in him were becoming more obvious with each hour. His eyes now glowed constantly with that strange inner light, and when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that seemed to come from somewhere beyond human vocal cords. Young Ho watched his son with growing fear and sadness. Jinsu was still there, still himself in many ways, but something fundamental was different. He moved with perfect precision, spoke with absolute certainty, and seemed to know things he could not possibly know. "I can sense the other ships awakening around the world," Jinsu said, as he stood before the main display. "The teams in Tokyo have made contact with their vessel's medical systems. London's energy ship is beginning to power up. But Moscow—" He paused, his glowing eyes reflecting data streams that only he could see. "Moscow is making a mistake." Dongwook had established communication links with research teams worldwide. The reports coming in were troubling. The Russian team had forced their way into their ship's weapon systems without understanding the safety protocols. 3 of their researchers had been killed when they triggered defensive systems they couldn't control. "Each ship requires specific genetic markers to operate safely," Jinsu explained. "The Russians are trying to bypass those safeguards using brute force technology. They don't understand that the ships will defend themselves." Jiwoo was working with a new team member, Nari, a neuroscientist from Seoul National University, who specialized in consciousness research. Nari had been brought in to study what was happening to Jinsu and to find ways to reverse or control the Unity protocol process. "His brain activity is unlike anything in medical literature," Nari reported to the group. "Normal human consciousness operates at specific frequencies, but Jinsu's neural patterns are resonating with frequencies that shouldn't be possible for biological tissue to generate." She showed them brain scans that looked more like abstract art than medical images. Jinsu's neural activity formed complex geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change even as they watched. "He's not losing his humanity," Nari continued. "He's gaining something additional. His human consciousness is still there, but it's being supplemented by something else. The ship's AI," Jinsu said without turning around. "And through it, the collective consciousness of everyone who has ever used Unity protocol. We are connected across time and space, sharing knowledge and experience." Young-ho felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you still my son?" Jinsu turned and smiled, and for a moment the glow in his eyes seemed warmer, more human. "I am still Jinsu Park, son of Young-ho Park, grandson of farmers who loved this land. But I am also more than that now. I carry the memories of Captain So-young Kim, of the colonists who died defending distant worlds, of the scientists who created these ships. They are all part of me now." Their conversation was interrupted by alarms from the ship's defensive systems. Dongwook received urgent communications from his headquarters and his face went pale as he listened. "We have a problem," he announced. "Foreign agents are moving toward our location. Multiple teams, probably from different countries, all converging on the farm. They want this ship and they're willing to fight for it." Young-ho looked around his family's land, now transformed into a military installation with tents, equipment, and armed guards. The quiet farm where he had spent his whole life was about to become a battlefield. "How long do we have?" Jiwoo asked. 6 hours, maybe less, Dongwook replied. "My government is sending reinforcements, but they won't arrive in time." Jinsu placed his hands on the ship's control systems again, and immediately the vessel around them began to change. Lights that had been dim grew brighter. The hum of power systems increased to a deeper, more ominous tone. "The ship has defensive capabilities," he said, "but using them will trigger responses from all the other ships worldwide. Once we begin active operations, there will be no hiding what we've found." Nari was studying her monitoring equipment frantically. "Jinsu, your neural patterns are becoming more unstable. The deeper you connect with the ship's systems, the more you risk losing yourself completely." "I know," Jinsu replied calmly. "But if I don't use the ship's defenses, everyone here will die. And this technology will fall into the hands of people who will use it to conquer, rather than protect." Young-ho made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "Show me how to help." "Father, no," Jinsu said, turning toward him with glowing eyes. "The process is dangerous. You could die or worse. This is my farm," Young-ho said firmly. "My family's land. And you're my son. If you're going to risk everything to protect what we've found, then I'm going to help you do it." Nari ran genetic scans on Young-ho and found that while he didn't have as strong a compatibility as Jinsu, he did carry some of the necessary markers. With the right preparations, he might be able to interface with secondary systems without triggering full Unity protocol, she said. They had 2 hours to prepare before the foreign agents arrived. Nari worked to develop a modified interface that would allow Young-ho to connect with the ship's systems without losing his human consciousness. Meanwhile, Jinsu used his deeper connection to understand the ship's full capabilities. "This vessel is more than just a repository of ancient knowledge," he told them. "It's a fully functional warship designed to fight enemies with technology far more advanced than anything on Earth today. But it was also designed to be operated by humans who chose to sacrifice their individual identity for collective power." The ship's displays showed the approaching forces. Military vehicles from at least 3 different countries were converging on the farm from multiple directions. They had advanced weapons, electronic warfare equipment, and what looked like their own version of alien technology. "They've been reverse engineering artifacts from their own ships," Jinsu observed. "But without proper genetic compatibility or unity protocol. Their technology is crude and dangerous." As the sun began to set, Young Ho took his position at a secondary control station, while Jinsu connected more deeply with the ship's main systems. Nari monitored both of them, ready to cut their connections if their life signs became critical. "Remember," she told Young Ho, "you're not trying to become part of the ship. You're just borrowing its capabilities temporarily. Stay focused on who you are and why you're doing this." Young Ho placed his hands on the control interface and felt the ship's consciousness touch his mind. It was like being connected to a vast library where every book was alive and trying to share its knowledge with him all at once. He struggled to maintain his sense of self as information flooded through his thoughts. Through the ship's sensors, he could see the attacking forces clearly. They were well-armed and well-trained, but they were also desperate. Each team believed that capturing this ship would give their country a decisive advantage over all others. "They don't understand," Jinsu said, his voice now carrying harmonics from dozens of other voices. "The ships were never meant to give one nation power over others. They were meant to unite humanity against a common threat." The first explosions lit up the evening sky as the attacking forces began their assault, but Young Ho and Jinsu were ready. The ship's defensive systems activated with devastating efficiency, creating energy shields that deflected missiles and weapon beams that could disable vehicles without killing their occupants. The battle was brief, but decisive. The ship's technology was simply too advanced for the attackers to overcome. But as the dust settled, Young Ho realized that everything had changed. The secret was out now. The whole world would know that someone had gained access to alien technology. "What happens now?" he asked his son. Jinsu, his eyes now blazing with inner light, looked toward the sky where stars were beginning to appear. "Now we prepare for the real war. The Dominion has noticed our activity. They know that Earth's guardians are awakening. They're coming, and they'll be here sooner than we expected." Young Ho felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. His simple farm had become the center of humanity's greatest challenge. And his son was no longer entirely human. But as he looked around at the damaged vehicles and confused soldiers outside, he knew there was no going back. The choice had been made, not just for his family, but for all of humanity. The age of hiding was over. The age of preparation had begun. Within a week, word of the discovery had reached the highest levels of government. Young Ho found himself face-to-face with Dong Wook, a serious man in a dark suit who claimed to work for national security. He arrived with a team of soldiers and scientists, turning the quiet farm into a military operation almost overnight. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," Dong Wook told Young Ho as they stood in the underground chamber. "This discovery could change everything, but it could also be extremely dangerous." Jiwoo had brought additional experts from the university. Hyojin was a military cryptographer who specialized in breaking ancient codes. She had been working day and night to decode the ship's databases. And what she found was both amazing and terrifying. "The ship contains detailed records of something called Unity Protocol," Hyojin explained to the group gathered in the control room. "It appears to be a process that allows human consciousness to merge with alien technology. The power it provides is incredible, but the humans who used it, they stopped being human." She showed them recordings from the ship's memory banks. The images were disturbing. They showed humans who had undergone the Unity Protocol, and while they retained their basic appearance, something fundamental had changed. Their eyes were different, glowing with an inner light. They moved in perfect coordination, like parts of a single mind. According to the records, these enhanced humans could control alien technology directly with their thoughts. Hyojin continued. They could pilot ships without instruments, fire weapons with perfect accuracy, and even communicate across vast distances instantly. But they lost their individual personalities. They became part of a collective consciousness. Dongwook studied the data carefully. Is this the only way to use the alien technology? The records suggest it's the most effective way, Yijin replied. The alien systems were designed to interface with biological consciousness in ways that human technology cannot match. Without Unity Protocol, humans can only access basic functions. But Young Ho was thinking about something else. His son Jin Soo had arrived from Seoul, where he worked as an engineer for a major electronics company. Jin Soo was brilliant with machines and had been fascinated by the ship's technology since the moment he saw it. There has to be another way, Jin Soo said. These systems respond to human touch in ways that pure alien technology wouldn't. Look at this. He placed his hand on one of the control panels, and immediately the screen lit up with information. The ship's systems seemed to recognize him, responding to his bioelectric field in ways they didn't respond to the other researchers. My readings show that the ship's technology is designed to work with human genetics, Taemin said, checking his instruments, but not modern human genetics. It's calibrated for humans who carried specific genetic markers that were apparently common in the ancient stellar colonies. Ji-woo was studying the genetic data on another screen. Some of these markers still exist in the current human population, but they're rare. Maybe 1 person in 10,000 carries the right combination. They ran genetic scans on everyone present. The results were surprising. Young Ho, Jin Soo, and Ji-woo all carried partial genetic markers. But Jin Soo's pattern was the closest match to what the ship's systems expected. This explains why the technology responds to him, Hyejin said. He's genetically compatible with the ship's interfaces. But their research was interrupted by urgent news from Dongwook. Similar energy signatures had been detected at sites around the world, and several foreign governments were already investigating them. We've confirmed ship locations in 12 countries so far, Dongwook reported. The Chinese found one beneath the Forbidden City 3 days ago. The Americans discovered one under the Pentagon. Everyone is trying to unlock the technology, and some are getting closer than others. The race was on. Each hidden ship contained different pieces of humanity's lost knowledge, and whoever could access them first would gain enormous advantages. The medical ship in Tokyo could revolutionize healthcare. The energy vessel in London could solve the world's power problems forever. And the weapons platform buried beneath Moscow could tip the balance of global military power. We need to understand our ship completely before we share anything with the international community, Dongwook said. And we need to figure out how to use this technology safely. Jin Soo had been experimenting with the ship's systems, learning to interface with them more effectively. He discovered that the technology responded not just to his genetic markers, but to his thoughts and emotions as well. When he was calm and focused, the systems operated smoothly. When he was stressed or angry, they became unpredictable. It's like the ship can sense my mental state, he told his father. The alien technology isn't just responding to my bioelectric field. It's reading my consciousness somehow. This discovery worried Hyejin. That could be the first stage of Unity Protocol activation. The systems might be preparing to merge with your consciousness. They found evidence to support this theory in the ship's medical bay. The equipment there was designed to monitor human brains and nervous systems in ways that current technology could not match. There were pods that looked like they were built to house humans during some kind of transformation process. This is how they did it, Ji-woo realized. The Unity Protocol wasn't just about training humans to use alien technology. It was about physically and mentally transforming them into something that could interface with the technology directly. The group faced a terrible choice. They could continue experimenting with the ship's systems and risk triggering unwanted changes in Jin Soo. Or they could limit their research and fall behind other countries who might be more willing to take risks. The decision became urgent when they received word that the Chinese research team had made a breakthrough. Satellite images showed massive energy discharges from their site, and communications from Beijing suggested they had successfully activated their ship's weapon systems. They're not being careful, Dongwook said grimly. They're pushing forward regardless of the risks. Jin Soo made the choice for all of them. I'm going to try interfacing with the main computer directly. If there's a way to access this technology without losing our humanity, the ship's AI should know about it. Before anyone could stop him, he placed both hands on the central control console and opened his mind to the ship's systems. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every screen in the control room lit up simultaneously. Energy flowed through the ship's systems like water through a dam that had suddenly burst. Jinsu's eyes began to glow with the same inner light they had seen in the ancient recordings. "Jinsu!" Young-ho shouted, reaching for his son, but Jinsu held up a hand to stop him. When he spoke, his voice carried a strange harmonic quality, as if multiple voices were speaking in perfect unison. "I can see it all," he said. "The network of ships, the alien fleets moving toward Earth, the full scope of what our ancestors achieved. But there's something else, something they didn't record in the ship's logs." The screens around them showed images of Earth as it had never been seen before. The planet was surrounded by a vast network of defensive installations, hidden not just underground but in space itself. Ancient satellites disguised as asteroids, weapons platforms built into the moon's surface, and energy shields that could protect the entire solar system. "The humans who used Unity Protocol didn't disappear," Jinsu said, his glowing eyes fixed on something beyond the physical world. "They're still here, still protecting Earth. They've been waiting for us to discover the ships and join them." The revelation changed everything. Humanity's ancient guardians were still active, still defending Earth against threats that ordinary humans couldn't even perceive. But they needed new members, fresh human consciousness to strengthen their collective and prepare for the Dominion's return. "The choice is coming," Jinsu said, his voice growing fainter as the ship's systems pulled at his consciousness. Earth must decide whether to remain purely human and face destruction, or evolve into something new and face the future. Young-ho looked at his son, seeing the alien light growing stronger in his eyes, and knew that the time for simple farming and quiet lives was ending. The universe was calling and humanity had to answer. Young-ho Park wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked at the mess in his barn. The spring floods had been the worst in 20 years. Water had rushed through the old building, washing away tools and damaging the wooden floor. Now he had to repair everything before the next planting season. He grabbed his crowbar and started pulling up the damaged floorboards. Most of them came up easily, but one section felt different. The wood looked newer, almost like someone had replaced it recently. Young-ho frowned. His family had owned this farm for 3 generations. He knew every inch of this barn. As he pried up the strange boards, he heard a metallic clang. The crowbar had hit something hard underneath. Young-ho cleared away more wood and dirt. What he found made him step back in surprise. There was a metal hatch built into the ground. It was perfectly round, about 3 feet across, and made of some kind of dark metal that did not look rusty at all. Strange symbols were carved around the edge, mixed with letters he could read. Some looked like Korean characters, others like English. Young-ho had lived on this farm his whole life. His father had never mentioned anything about a hatch under the barn. Neither had his grandfather. This was impossible. He found a metal ring set into the hatch and pulled. The heavy cover swung open with a soft hiss like air escaping from a sealed container. Cool air rushed up from below, carrying a strange smell that reminded him of hospitals and metal. Young-ho peered down into the opening. A ladder made of the same dark metal led down into darkness. He could not see the bottom. His practical farmer's mind told him to close the hatch and call someone. Maybe the police or the county officials, but his curiosity was stronger. He went to his truck and got a flashlight. The beam showed that the ladder went down about 30 feet into what looked like a tunnel. The walls were smooth and covered with the same dark metal as the hatch. Thin lines of blue light ran along the walls, giving off just enough glow to see. Young-ho climbed down slowly. Each step echoed in the tunnel below. When he reached the bottom, he found himself in a corridor that stretched in both directions. The blue lights led away from the ladder, deeper underground. The tunnel was perfectly straight and wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side. The air was clean and fresh, which was strange for something buried so deep. Young-ho followed the lights, his footsteps the only sound in the silence. After walking for what felt like 10 minutes, the tunnel ended at a massive door. It was at least 12 feet tall and made of the same metal as everything else. More symbols covered its surface, and in the center was a large circle that looked like it might be some kind of scanner. Young-ho approached the door carefully. As he got closer, the circle began to glow with soft white light. Then, without any sound, the door split down the middle and slid open. The sight beyond took his breath away. He stood at the edge of an enormous underground chamber. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it in the darkness above. and filling most of the space was a ship. But this was not like any ship Young-ho had ever seen. It was huge, easily as long as a football field and shaped like a flattened teardrop. The hull was covered in the same dark metal as the tunnel, but sections of it glowed with different colors. Blue lines ran across the surface in patterns that hurt his eyes to follow. The ship sat on massive supports that lifted it about 20 feet off the chamber floor. Ramps and walkways connected it to the ground, and more of those blue lights marked pathways around the chamber. Young-ho walked closer, his mind struggling to understand what he was seeing. This was clearly not from Earth. The design was too strange, too advanced. But mixed in with the alien-looking parts were things he recognized. He could see what looked like pieces of human technology welded to the hull. There were symbols that looked like military markings, and in one place he could clearly see letters that spelled NATO. A ramp led up to an opening in the side of the ship. Young-ho climbed it slowly, his heart pounding. The opening led to a corridor inside the ship. The walls here were different, more familiar. They looked like the inside of a human spacecraft if humans had built spacecraft this advanced. He found what looked like a control room. Banks of dark screens covered the walls, and in the center was a chair that faced a large window looking out into the chamber. Young-ho sat down in the chair, and immediately the screens around him came to life. Words appeared on the main screen in front of him. Some were in English, others in Korean. The text was old-fashioned, like something from centuries ago, but he could read it. Captain's log, stardate 2847-3. This is Captain So-young Kim of the Earth vessel Agukga. We have arrived at Earth with the last refugees from the Kepler colony. The Dominion forces have destroyed everything. Earth is our final stand. Young-ho read the words again, not believing what he was seeing. The date would make this from over 800 years in the future. But the ship was clearly ancient, covered in dust and showing signs of age. More text appeared as he watched. Project Unity was our only hope, but the cost was too high. We saved Earth but lost ourselves in the process. I am recording this message for whoever finds this ship. Inside the data cores is everything we learned, everything we achieved among the stars. Humanity must know what they once were, and what they might become again. The screen went dark for a moment, then showed a star map. Earth was in the center, surrounded by dozens of other worlds marked with human symbols. Lines connected them all in a vast network that stretched across the galaxy. Young-ho stared at the map for a long time. According to this, humans had once traveled between the stars and built colonies on distant worlds. They had fought wars with aliens and achieved incredible things. And then somehow, it had all been forgotten. He thought about his simple farm above and the quiet life he had always known. Now he was sitting in what might be evidence that humanity had once ruled a galactic empire. Young-ho knew he could not keep this secret. This was too important, too big for one farmer to handle alone. He needed help, and he knew exactly who to call. His sister Ji-woo worked at a university in Seoul. She studied ancient civilizations and would know what to do. She would also be the only person who might believe his incredible story. Young-ho took one last look around the control room, then made his way back through the ship and up the tunnel to his barn. The ordinary world above looked different now, like he was seeing it through new eyes. He pulled out his phone and dialed his sister's number. When she answered, he took a deep breath. "Ji-woo," he said, "I need you to come to the farm and bring anyone you know who studies old things. I found something under the barn that you need to see." Ji-woo Park arrived at the farm 2 days later with her research partner Tae-min. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent years digging up ancient ruins around the world. Tae-min was younger, with thick glasses and a backpack full of electronic equipment. Young-ho led them to the barn, trying to prepare them for what they would see. But when Ji-woo climbed down the ladder and saw the ship, she simply stood and stared for 5 full minutes without saying a word. "This is impossible," she finally whispered. "The technology here is centuries ahead of anything we have today. But the dust patterns, the wear on the metal, the ship is ancient." Tae-min was already taking pictures and measurements. His equipment was beeping and flashing as it analyzed the materials around them. "The metal is unlike anything in our databases," he said. "It's some kind of alloy that shouldn't exist with current technology." They spent the first day just exploring the ship and documenting what they found. Ji-woo was amazed by how the design mixed human and alien elements. In some rooms, everything looked familiar, like the inside of a modern spaceship. In others, the walls curved in impossible ways and the controls made no sense to human eyes. It's like two different species worked together to build this, she told Young-ho. But that should be impossible too. On the second day, Taemin made a mistake that changed everything. He was trying to analyze one of the control panels when he accidentally touched a sequence of buttons. The panel lit up, and suddenly the entire ship began to hum with power. Lights came on throughout the vessel. The air systems activated with a soft whoosh, and from speakers hidden in the walls a voice began to speak. The voice was speaking Korean, but in an old dialect that Ji-woo barely recognized. It took her several minutes to understand what it was saying. Greetings, descendants of Earth. I am the final recording of Captain So-young Kim. If you are hearing this, then someone has finally found the Aguka and activated her systems. You must be prepared for what you are about to learn. The voice continued, and slowly Ji-woo translated for the others. Captain So-young told a story that seemed impossible. According to her, humans had left Earth over 1,000 years ago and spread across the galaxy. They had built great cities on distant worlds and achieved wonders of science and technology. But then came the war with the Dominion. The aliens were a coalition of different species who believed that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to grow. They attacked human colonies one by one, destroying everything they found. We fought for 200 years, the captain's voice said. We developed new weapons, new ships, new ways of thinking. But there were too many of them and too few of us. In the end, only Earth remained. The ship's computers activated as the recording played. Screens throughout the vessel came to life, showing star maps, battle records, and technical diagrams. Young-ho saw images of human cities floating in space, massive ships bigger than mountains, and weapons that could destroy entire planets. The final battle was here. In Earth's solar system, Captain So-young continued, we had one last weapon, something we called Project Unity. It allowed us to combine human consciousness with alien technology. The power was incredible, but the cost was our humanity itself. Ji-woo paused in her translation, her face pale. She's saying they won the war, but the humans who used this Unity technology, they became something else, something that wasn't quite human anymore. The recording went on to explain that the remaining humans made a difficult choice. They used Project Unity to defeat the Dominion, but then they hid all evidence of humanity's galactic empire. They wanted their descendants to develop naturally, without the burden of their advanced technology. But we knew the Dominion would return someday, the captain said. So we hid ships like this one all over Earth. When the time comes when humanity is ready, these vessels will awaken and give you the tools you need to defend yourselves. The recording ended, but the ship's computers continued to show information. Taemin found databases full of advanced science, star maps showing hundreds of human colonies, and weapon designs that made nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. Look at this, Ji-woo called from another console. She had found what looked like a medical database. They had cures for every disease known to humans. Cancer, aging, genetic disorders, everything. Young-ho wandered through the ship in a daze. His family had farmed this land for generations, never knowing that beneath their feet lay evidence of humanity's greatest achievement and greatest tragedy. But the most disturbing discovery came when Taemin found the ship's tactical systems. The screen showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with markers indicating the current positions of various fleets and civilizations. The Dominion still exists, he said quietly. According to this, they control most of the galaxy now, and they're moving in this direction. Ji-woo checked his calculations twice. If this information is accurate, they'll reach Earth's solar system in less than 50 years. The three of them stood in the ship's control room, overwhelmed by what they had learned. Humanity had once been a great interstellar civilization, but had sacrificed everything to save Earth from alien invasion. Now the aliens were coming back and Earth was defenseless. We have to tell someone, Ji-woo said. The government, the military, the scientific community. This is too important to keep secret. But Young-ho was thinking about something else. The captain mentioned other ships hidden around Earth. If this one is here under our farm, then there must be others, maybe hundreds of them. Taemin was already checking the ship's databases. I'm finding references to sites in every major country. Tokyo, London, Moscow, New York. There are coordinates for dozens of locations. As they explored deeper into the ship's files, they began to understand the true scope of what their ancestors had hidden. Each ship contained different pieces of humanity's lost knowledge. Some held medical advances, others had new energy technologies, and still others carried weapons and defensive systems. It's like they scattered the pieces of a puzzle across the entire planet, Jiwoo said. No single ship has everything, but together they contain all of humanity's lost civilization. Young-ho looked at his sister and her partner, both brilliant scientists who had spent their lives studying the past. Now they had found a past that was bigger and more important than anyone had ever imagined. What do we do now? He asked. Jiwoo was quiet for a long moment. We start by documenting everything. Then we need to contact others who can help us understand this technology. But we have to be careful. If the wrong people get this information... She didn't finish the sentence, but they all understood. The technology in this ship could cure diseases and solve energy problems. But it could also build weapons powerful enough to destroy countries. As they prepared to leave the ship and return to the surface, Young-ho took one last look around the control room. The screens were still active, showing star maps and alien fleet positions. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was slowly moving toward Earth, just as they had 800 years ago. But this time, humanity would not be caught unprepared. The question was whether they could unlock their ancestors' secrets in time, and whether they could do it without losing their humanity in the process. The ship's systems hummed quietly around them as they climbed back up the tunnel to the ordinary world above.